If you want to reduce rework, you're going to want to design your Next.js app, and I've discovered some categories that will help you do that. So I'm going to share that in this video. But first of all, let's talk about our options. One, you can just go for it. This is what I've been doing for a long time. It's good for prototyping, you'll learn a lot and you explore, but you end up rewriting everything many times. Second, you could think through a design, which is probably a lot more efficient in the long run. You reduce rework, and you have the added bonus of being able to get other people to help you with those tasks that you break down. Nobody's going to help you with anything if your whole design for your app is stuck in your head. You have to break it into smaller pieces for people to tackle. If you follow the steps in this video, you'll be able to create dozens of issues for people to take small pieces of your idea and implement them one little bit at a time. So for context, this is all about Boom Languages at boomlanguages.com. The docs site link is here and also in the description. And we're using a Next.js stack of Next.js in the front end, tRPC also for routes, Mantine and Tailwind in the front end, and the RM is Prisma for connecting to the Postgres database. So first things first with the design, definitely start with a user story. I know there are many definitions for this. It's a hot term in the agile world, but to me, this just means defining the flow. And sometimes it's best to write a list. Other times you can create a diagram like this one where you have pages in purple flowing to routes, server routes, and the yellow is emails. Having this flow diagram was essential to writing all the designs for these little pieces here. It really brings it together and reminds you where you are in the big picture. So as far as doing the detailed design, I found that there were three main categories of things to design. There are components, which are visual things displayed on the page. There are pages, and the way that I set this up is that the pages do all of the external requests, such as tRPC requests. Components and pages are actually very similar because pages in many ways are components, but in Next.js you have route handlers that you can mess with and other things like that. And finally, routes are server-side procedures that run. So let's look at components. How do you break those down? First of all, it's nice to have a visual wireframe to show you exactly how the component's going to look. And then the other fields that are helpful are the props, which are basically the inputs from the parent, the state, which is self-explanatory, anything that this component is going to keep track of and the parent will not have access to. And finally, subcomponents, what pieces make up this component. And if you define these broad categories, you'll have an easier time figuring out how components all fit together. Next up is pages. I only had two pieces here, components on the page and requests that the page makes. The request is particularly helpful because it links over to routes. And third, we have routes. Environment variables, if your route accesses a certain environment variable, it's good to note it there. Inputs, self-explanatory, but you just define which fields and how they're formatted and provide an example. Similarly, for the output that the user can expect, it's nice to provide an example. And the side effects, what actually happens other than just the input and the output. And there were some other things that didn't fit into the big three categories. I didn't have as many of them, but they're still important. You want to note which emails you're sending and assume that you're going to have a template for it. It's a lot like a page. You want to keep track of context, which are like session data and common requests that will be used in many different places. So you can make that common to all of the pages that need it, and they can just use user context in this case to access it. And the database objects, surely you'll want to take a stab at your schema. And non-database objects, I found myself adding this category. I called it models. Maybe that's not really accurate, but anything that is not really stored in the database, so it won't be a Prisma schema object, but you still want a data structure to hold it. I only had one of these. So that pretty much wraps up everything I had to say about designing Next.js apps. Thanks for watching. If you want to get involved with creating Boom Languages or any other projects, you can go to gitlab.com/PageKey and you'll find all kinds of stuff to build. And you can get involved. So thanks for that. See ya.